gentlemen, may I have your attention, please? The show starts in 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go.
Good afternoon and welcome to the Right Fit Podcast. I'm Daryl Jacobs, your host. Join me every Friday with decision makers in collegiate athletics and professional sports. But joining me today is the founder and president of the BDS agency, the leader in the representation of women and men college basketball coaches. Please welcome to the show, Mr. Brian Stanchak. Brian, welcome.
Thanks so much for having me, Daryl. Excited to be here, man.
Well, thank you for taking the time out your truly busy schedule. And I know the listeners and viewers are going to be very excited, particularly the coaches, going to be very excited to hear what you have to say. But before we get started with the Q&A, Brian, talk a little bit about your journey, both in collegiate athletics and into the representation space that you are in now.
Sure. I probably have one of the most unique backgrounds in terms of being an agent, because I went to Seton Hall University to actually be a college basketball coach. I had started by working with Tommy Amaker and Chris Collins at Seton Hall, and that was my objective. But I mentioned this because it was also kind of like the height of the Jerry Maguire era, where every student going through sport management at Seton Hall appeared to want to be a sports agent. And I was probably the only one that did not want to be a sports agent. I wanted to be a college basketball coach. And now I'm probably the only one that am a sports agent. And so it's funny how life twists and turns. But yeah, my desire was always to coach college basketball. So I had coached worked for Tommy Amaker at Seton Hall, and then stayed on board when Louis Orr came on board as the head coach, and graduated, went to the University of Pennsylvania, worked for Fran Dunphy and Patrick Knapp before transitioning over to the women's side. While I was at Penn, Coach Knapp, who was the women's coach over there, kind of took me under his wing. And so got to really learn and appreciate the women's side of college basketball. Not the 15th kid on the roster was not, thinking that they were making it to the pros. It was much more fundamental based, and I really enjoyed it. And so had an opportunity to go back to Jersey and Fairleigh Dickinson University for 2 years as the top assistant, and then back to the Big East as a Big East assistant at the age of 25 for 3 years under Phyllis Mangina, who was the head coach at Seton Hall. And when she stepped down, I was kind of at a crossroads. I had kind of felt really satisfied with where my career was, other than potentially being a head coach. I mean, I'd reached my goal of coaching the best conference in the country, which was the Big East. And that was the old Big East with UConn, Louisville, Notre Dame. And so decided to transition out, was fortunate enough to become an athletic director at a college in Pennsylvania, where I started seeing the other side of the business. And so it was during that time that I started advising a lot of my coaching friends in women's basketball on their contracts or handling situations with administrators or interview prep. And some of them said, "Hey, why don't you be my agent?" And I said, "I got no interest in being an agent. It's a slimy connotation." And but the more I thought about it, the more I realized that experience that I had could provide real value to coaches. And so started my journey back then in 2013, and have been fortunate to work with outstanding coaches and great people since.
I would say you are definitely the barometer in terms of representation, particularly on the women's side of the spectrum. Talk a little bit about who and what is BDS agency.
Yeah, again, my approach to representation is much different than someone who hasn't been in a coach's shoes or an administrator's shoes. I'm invested in it, not just on a professional level, but a personal level. And so the BDS agency, I approach with the mindset of what would I want from an agent if I was still coaching and had an agent. And so it comes from not just advising coaches, but marketing coaches and representing them, whether it's being an advocate for them or in contract negotiations. You know, I really saw that, you know, when I was an athletic director and I was advising a lot of my coaching friends, I saw that there was a need for someone, and there were a couple people doing it, but there was a need for someone on the women's basketball side that prioritized women's basketball coaches, that didn't just talk to them when it came time to renegotiate their contract and or when it was time for them to pay their bill. It was developing this year-long relationship with them that continually helped them, be an advocate for them, be an advisor, sounding board to them, and be able to focus all my attention on helping that specific market segment advance their career and make them a priority.
Brian, talk a little bit about, and I was very excited to get to this question. Talk about the coaching landscape in college basketball. How is it different now compared to maybe 10 years ago? And then, you know, we'll probably get into the next question in regards to, and you can answer this as well.
Sure.
Do you believe representation of coaches, why it has become so popular, and do you think it's a must?
Yeah, you know, the league or the landscape of college athletics in terms of coaching has changed dramatically. I mean, I was probably, you know, I have a couple clients that joke with me and they say, you're the smart one because you got out of the business because of how much it's changed. I mean, if you think about it, you know, when I left coaching back in 2010, so, I mean, it is a long time ago, but it's not a long time ago. You know, the season is long. And at the time, you know, summer camps were starting to become a little bit more prevalent, and student athletes were allowed to be on campus where you could work them out a little bit more. But now those are givens. And so, you know, you got the long season, and then, I mean, you're grinding during the summer, whether it's recruiting student athletes on campus for workouts, summer camps. Your downtime is extremely limited. Plus you throw in NIL, you throw in heightened awareness of mental health for student athletes, the transfer portal. The job is all consuming now. I mean, your focus is essentially more on the retention of your student athletes and their mental health than it is on recruiting new student athletes. And so it has changed dramatically. It has added a lot of pressure to coaches. I think that's why you're seeing some coaches just decide, you know what, I'm ready to try something else. And to be quite honest, I don't blame them.
And that's a very good point. The landscape has changed so dramatically, and I'm glad I'm on this side of the spectrum as well. After spending over 20 years in it as a head coach, that's why I'm behind the mic at ESPN and get to hear those complaints about the portal and everything. And I'm sure a lot of your clients are experiencing that, you know, as well. Talk a little bit about the type of better yet, talk about some of the coaches you represent and some of the institutions that you have engaged with.
Sure. Well, let me take a step back because I know you had asked, and maybe I didn't necessarily answer the part about the, you know, representation and is it a must part. You know, there's certainly a lot more agents kind of coming out of the woodworks, especially on the women's side of college basketball since I started. And I think that they see there is, you know, a financial opportunity available to them, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they're invested in it like they would be beyond that financial gain. And again, that's where I think I am different because I've been in the shoes. As far as it being a must, you know, I think it all depends if it's the right person representing you, and if you're in a position that that you need representation. You need someone to be an advocate for you, to market you, to advise you, to if it's an agent that has that knowledge, the proven successful experience, the access to information, the connections to be that asset to you, like that, then it can be a must. For me, again, you know, like I said before, I don't talk to clients only when it comes time to renegotiating contracts or when it comes to paying their bills. my relationship building with them and their families is year round. So they're calling me, during the season if they need advice on handling a student athlete issue, or during the summer months if they're having issues with an administrator, or whatever it might be. So that they know that they can contact me and be a resource, and I'm reaching out, year round. And so I think that is really valuable. It's almost like an insurance policy. Like, you feel good knowing, like, hey, I got an unbiased person that has dealt with, hundreds of coaches and their situations that I can call and be able to help me through this situation, or be an advocate for me, or market me, has the relationships. And so I think it all, like I said, and that's kind of a wide ranging answer, but it all depends on the person that would be representing you and the coach that's in that position. As far as coaches I work with, I work with a variety of different coaches. And so, I've worked with, I've been fortunate to work with 60 clients since I started back in 2013. So starting with the off season of 2014, 60 clients who have obtained a first time or new Division I head coach position in college basketball. I don't know any agency that could touch that number. Like, I really don't. And I'm not saying it to be arrogant, but I've just, I think a lot of it has been the strategy in terms of me, of how I built the business with clients. It's not, it's quality over quantity, where I think some agents think, oh, if I have the most amount of clients, I got the best odds. Me, I'm like, if I have fewer clients and put more time into them, then I'm going to have the better odds. And so, out of those 60 and other head coaches that I've worked with, I have clients at the highest level. J.C. Hoyt at Oklahoma State, Amy Williams at Nebraska, Dawn Plitzwhite at West Virginia. J.C. and Dawn both got those opportunities this year to move to the Power 5 level. Clients at the high level of non-Power 5 schools. So coaches like Jose Fernandez at University of South Florida, and Toyle Wilson at SMU, and Megan Duffy at Marquette. And then you have coaches at the lower level of Division I that, aren't provided the resources that those bigger schools have. So coaches like Maureen McGarity at Holy Cross, or Anna Nims at Northwestern State, or Ashley Langford at Stony Brook, Terrell Robinson at NCA&T. So it's kind of a wide variety of coaches that I'm working with as far as head coaches.
Talk about, a lot of times, and it's amazing, when I talk to some coaches, I've talked to some high school coaches who reached out to me and say, hey, I'm thinking about hiring an agent. And that blows me away that a high school coach is thinking about hiring an agent. Talk a little bit about how that may not be a good thing, particularly for a high school coach. And who do you recommend have an agent? What kind of profile should the coach have in regards to representation? Because as you know, a lot of even search firms don't like dealing with agents sometimes unless you have that relationship, or even athletic directors.
And that's where I've been really fortunate, because I've been a coach and administrator. And so there are times where agents kind of ruin, the stigma, they put a negative connotation on the business, because of their dealings with administrators. And I'm not saying there's some really great agents out there, but there are some where, then ADs just don't want to deal with an agent, with any agent. And that takes away from, the relationship that they could have with the good ones, or the ones that are well-intentioned and stuff. So as far as, when coaches need an agent, again, like I said, there's so many people coming out of the woodworks trying to, saying I'm an agent and can get in the business and whatnot. It's hard to necessarily say, but for me, I'll just speak for me. Like if I have a client who, and this has evolved since I started, when I had first started, obviously, my approach was a little bit different. The last couple of years, last 5 years, been very strategic and very particular, selective about who I represented. But if I have a client who's a sitting head coach that I feel, has potential to maybe increase their worth where they're at, or grow in the profession and advance their career, then that's someone that I'd like to work with. If it's an assistant coach that is ready to become a Division I head coach, or might be, 2-3 years down the line, then it's someone that I could be interested in working with. But the most important thing for me is I want to work with great people. like this is my business. This is not someone, I'm not working for a big corporate company that like, I'll just sign anyone. And if I got issues with someone, just pass them off to someone else or, just cut ties, So for me, I want to work with people that I enjoy being around, that are good people. And so I joke sometimes, I'm like, I wouldn't tell my wife, like some of the people that I've said, no, I'm not interested in working with, because she'd look up their salaries and be like, what are you doing? But I want to enjoy the people that I'm working with. And so that's extremely important to me. So I know that doesn't give you a defined answer, but for those high school coaches that ask you that, they're basically looking for someone that can be a network starter for them. And it's all about networking. But here's the other thing. Like, if you think about it, like Daryl, you've been a head coach, like when you're hiring assistant coaches, yeah, you're going to rely on people that, you trust to be able to, give you those names. Now, what I'll also say to my clients when they're interviewing, or I recommend maybe a client of mine for a job that's assistant for them, is listen, but you also got to talk to the people that they've worked with, because the relationship that they have with me, could be completely, I'm not in the office with them every single day, like I don't know what their attitude is in the office, how they're working with other people in the office. Like they might be great with me. So, it's the same thing from that high school coach. Like if they don't have that relationship with the coach, it's going to be really hard to make that transition, even if they're working with an agent. Now, an agent can help them grow their contact base, so that can be an advantage. But if they think all of a sudden signing with an agent is going to be like a miracle work, that's unrealistic. I mean, I'm probably the worst salesman when it comes to selling myself, because I say, listen, I can't promise you anything. I can't promise you you're going to get a job, better contract, whatever it might be. And if you're okay with that and you're in, then let's do it. And if not, then no sweat.
But as they say, Brian, you got receipts. So you don't have to sell yourself. Your receipts speak for you in that regards. Let's get to the interview process. Talk about some of the do's and don'ts when it comes to interviewing.
Yeah, there's going into the interview process, understanding that every single interview is different. And when I say that, I mean, it could be the process itself. It could be the people that you're talking to. You might talk to an administrator who's extremely dry, and you can't read even if you're bringing the same enthusiasm, or someone who's going to be extremely engaging and outgoing. So just going into the interview process with just an open mind, understanding that you got to be ready for anything that kind of comes your way, and you got to adapt to that. Doing your research is extremely important, and going in prepared to talk about not just what you've done, but how you're going to be able to apply it and do it there at that specific job. And, like coaches worry about, an interview portfolio, and I help my clients with it all the time. And that's a great foundation to build off of. But at the end of the day, you have to evolve and tailor it, because again, not every interview process is the same. Not every program is the same. And so being able to make that administrator feel confident that you've not only handled what they're looking for, and you do that by providing examples and stories to keep them engaged, but also how you're going to do it there, that you have a plan, that you're organized, that you're responsible, and that you're ready for this opportunity. And so I think I can't emphasize enough the just being prepared and ready to adapt during that interview process. Because if you go in thinking, I'm going to say this, and this is how the interview is going to go, you're going to be completely surprised. And experience, because you could go through mock interview after mock interview with people. Like, don't sweat it if for some reason I have clients that are in amazing positions now that interviewed for 2 or 3 jobs, didn't get them, and everything couldn't have worked out any better for them than having that experience. And so don't get discouraged too, and try to all of a sudden change who you are or change your process when you go through an interview process and don't get that opportunity.
Brian, let's take a commercial break. I'm excited to get back after this commercial break and continue this conversation. You're watching and listening to The Right Fit.
The Right Fit podcast is brought to you by Rising Coaches Search and Consulting. Tired of spending what seems like all of your time and budget filling coaching vacancies? Let Rising Coaches Search and Consulting handle your next coaching search. Our process is simple. We identify, vet, and recruit a talented and diverse group of professionals that fits your institution's profile, all for a low price that we guarantee will beat our competitions. Plus, all of your searches will be handled by former coaches, meaning we will get the best possible insight on all of your candidates, and you'll get the perspective that only a former coach could provide. For testimonials, a full client list, or more information, please visit risingcoaches.com.
Welcome back to the Right Fit Podcast. I'm your host, Daryl Jacobs. I'm here with my guest today, Brian Stanchak, founder and president of the BDS agency, one of the leaders in representation of both men and women college basketball coaches. Let's talk a little bit about trends. You mentioned NIL as one of them. You mentioned mental health, as well. Talk about some trends that why coaches are pursuing coaching opportunities they should be abreast of.
Yeah. And again, every NIL is extremely important. Understanding what the school's strengths and limitations are with NIL and what you can kind of bring to the table is important. Student athlete mental health and student athlete experience. I mean, those things are huge. And so you can't go in and emphasize, hey, like I'm going to promote, student athlete mental health, and we're going to create a great experience. But like they want to know that you have a plan for those things and what you're going to do to implement, to make sure that you're doing everything you can to create that well-rounded experience that student athletes enjoy. And listen, and that's the thing, like you're not going to win over every single player, whether you recruit them or that, you inherit them. But the administration just wants to see that you have that plan going in of, hey, these are things that I've done in the past that have worked and been successful. And then the transfer portal, is huge. And so going in and just knowing, I have clients that have interviewed for jobs, within the last 3 weeks, and their rosters are bare. The rosters are bare. Like they've lost like 5 kids to transfer portals. And so I'm working with them on, hey, like when you go in, I know the administrator is just looking for someone that can fill out a strong roster for next year. It's not about trying to recruit 22 high school kids for next year. It's about filling out the roster that, you can really move things along, starting with the 2023 recruiting class. So you got to go in and show them, hey, okay, I got like 5, these are 5 kids that I'm on, that is, you hire me today, I'm getting on the phone and I'm calling them. I got relationships with the coaches. We recruited them at our previous school. I'm ready to go. Now, at the end of the day, if they get the job, and are they going to hold them to the fact if none of those 5 kids came in? No. But it's about having that plan and understanding, hey, I got to understand the situation and I got to be able to maximize it to make those administrators feel comfortable that I'm coming in with that plan, understanding what I need to do, whether it's NIL, mental health, student athlete experience, transfer portal.
One of the areas that you've been a strong advocate for, and actually you serve on our board advisor for the Rising Coaches DEI Alliance, which I'm executive director. Regarding D&I, talk about the progress you witnessed over the last 2 years in college basketball.
Yeah, it's been awesome, Daryl. Like, I'll be honest, man, it's been so I've worked with, and one thing about my agency that I'm really, really proud of is we have when I talk about those 60 clients that have become first time or obtain new Division I head coach positions, it's very diverse. It's males, females, African-American males, females, white males, females. It's very diverse in that group. So over the last 2 years, I've represented 10 clients who have gotten a first-time or new Division I head coach position that were either a minority male or female. It is to see coaches, for example, like Vanessa Blair Lewis, an incredible head coach, had won at Mount St. Mary's, had won incredibly at Bethune-Cookman, but has had opportunities. And for her, you get that MEAC stigma, you get that SWAC stigma, coming from an HBCU. And I kept pushing, man, she is an incredible leader, an incredible coach. Just talk to her. And every person she talked to, she won over, whether it was at George Mason or wherever else. And so to see coaches like Vanessa, who is so deserving because there's a heightened awareness. And I'm not saying that's why, George Mason hired, I feel like George Mason hired the best coach and person that they could have hired for that position. But to see coaches like Vanessa be able to advance their career over the last couple of years has been extremely meaningful. If you go on, so I run a conference, as you know, every May called Head Coach Training Center. And so, part of what I also do, though, is I evaluate trends in hiring in women's basketball. And I put out the data every August, September, once the job cycle slows down. And so I just pulled it up here. So there were 22 minority coaches, 19 being female, hired in 2021, 18 this offseason. Now, the number of jobs has increased a little bit this offseason last, but those numbers have surpassed where they were for the previous years. And so I think just a heightened awareness of being able to understand, hey, we have to make sure that we're diversifying our pool, has created a lot of opportunities for other coaches.
And I know that that's one thing that you've been a strong advocate for, and she's a tremendous coach. And I was very happy to see her get the opportunity. So is Kim English, who's the men's coach, who's doing a tremendous job. Let's talk about differentiators. I often get asked these questions when it comes to candidates when they're going in for an interview. What can a coach doing an interview do to stand out from the other coaches in the interview process? I know that's a tough question to answer.
Yeah.
And, sometimes I tell them it could be your personality. It could be how you relate, how you read the room, how you articulate the things you've done. But talk a little bit about based on your experience.
Yeah. I think it comes down to comfort. And the reason I say that is you see hires, and you're like, how the heck did that person get that job? Well, a lot of times, and I don't want to say a lot of times, but there's times where you're going to hire what you know what you're going to get from that person. So yeah, there's times where someone might have a resume that blows someone else's out of the water, but that AD might have a relationship with someone that's an administrator that they trust. And that administrator says, you're not going to have issues with this person. They're going to run a clean program. And that person with that outstanding resume might not have that connection to the AD. Well, the AD is going to hire what he thinks he knows or she knows that she's getting from that coach. And so the comfortability aspect is huge in it. It's also during the interview process. It's making an administrator feel comfortable that you are prepared for that opportunity. You've handled situations that you're going to be stepping into and having to handle there. And you want that job, not just because it's a Division I head coaching job or it's a Power 5 head coaching job, but because you really believe that this is a place that you feel you can be very successful at. And so I think the comfortability aspect is extremely important. You can, and I use this example sometimes. I mean, some people think the biggest name has to call for me when this job opens because that's when I'm going to get it. Well, like ADs are smart enough to know, well, if this head coach is calling me, about this coach, why haven't they hired them, for their job? Or, a head coach is calling for their assistant, sometimes, it's because they want to get them off their staff. And so they're trying to push them on an AD. But an AD, for the most part, an administrator is not going to want to put themselves in a bad position with another administrator. And so the relationship that coaches build as you're trying to become a head coach or advance your career with administrators is more important than it is with head coaches, because head coach, administrators will read through that. But again, an administrator is not going to want to put another administrator in a bad position by recommending someone, because they're in the same industry right there. So I think that relationship piece with administrators is huge.
I think that is so important. A lot of times when coaches interview, like you said, on paper, they're the better candidates. And as you say, you figure out, how did this person get the job? And automatically, based on my experience, as I told them, henceforth the name of the show, it's the right fit. That's what they're looking for. Maybe they work with an administrator. And sometimes you got to do that research. If you got candidates going for a job, I tell other candidates, find out if whoever the candidate pool, if you know who it is, find out if they have a connection with somebody within the athletic department. And those relationships at these other schools, whether you build that, because as you know, the assistant AD one day where you might be starting out assistant coach might be an AD somewhere down the road or move up to a different level. And that has been the case. I tell a lot of coaches, listen, it don't have nothing to do that you're not a good coach or you're not good enough. Everything is about relationships today and who they feel comfortable with. As you mentioned, if somebody within the athletic department say, hey, Brian is a great coach, you ain't going to have an issue with him. He's going to get along with the constituents. He's out in the community. He can work, internally, externally. He's a team player. And you may not have the most impressive resume as opposed to somebody who has an impressive resume, and you might find out might be difficult to work with.
For sure.
Yeah, and I've seen that happen so much in the industry, and thank you for sharing that as well. Before I get to go ahead, Brian.
I'll say this, it also then, but what that does is it gets you in the door, but then you can't assume that, oh, the job's mine because I got that relationship. Like if you go in with that mindset, then you're not going to get the job. Right. You got to go in like just as hungry, just as desperate for that opportunity as if you didn't know anyone, because you still got to be impressive. And so, I tell clients all the time, and like, hey, okay, and every situation is different, but hey, I was able to get you in the door here. Like I'll prepare you and stuff. But ultimately, and I get asked that, when I have multiple clients interview for the same job, and it happens all the time. And it's because of the relationships I've developed with search firms and administrators. But I'll say it like, ultimately, I don't pick who then gets it on campus. I don't pick who gets offered the job. I'm going to help everyone out as much as I can. So once you get that opportunity and have that in there, it's up to you to kind of to seal the deal at that point.
Brian, I want you to share a little bit you talked about your head coaching training center. Go ahead and plug it right now and tell everybody how they can attend. And it's a great event that you do every year, tremendous event for women coaches, aspiring coaches, even the coaches that you represent come in and actually do a lot of great things during those couple of days.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. So I started Head Coach Training Center back in 2015. First year was 2016, because honestly, there's so many clinics that you can go to for on the court development, but there was nothing that focused on the aspects of coaching that go off the court, and what it takes to obtain that head coach position, but also be successful in that role. And so we focus exclusively on off the court development. And so this year's event is May 4th to the 6th. So next week, we still have a few registration spots available. If anyone's interested, you just visit head coach. It's www.headcoachtc.com. And you'll be able to look at the registration link there. It's at Margaritaville in Orlando, Florida. We always try to hold it at an incredible resort because I'm big on experience. There's the learning, but there's the networking experience, and just create a really well-rounded experience. And so I'm really excited. We got coaches like JC Hoyt, Jose Fernandez, Ashley Langford, Ty Grace, Robin Freilich speaking this year, Tony Bozzella from Seton Hall speaking this year. And so it's going to be a really great group of not just head coaches, but search firms and administrators as well.
This is just a just can't miss event. I say that every year. You see me on Twitter when you start putting it out. So you got to attend this event if you're looking not only to try to network, but also learn how to maintain the job once you get the job and how to run a program. That is so important. Here's the last question, which I love.
Yeah.
We get to know you a little bit. It's called word association. I say
here we go.
a name, person, place, or thing. You say the first thing that comes to mind.
All right.
New Jersey.
Home.
College basketball.
My love.
Family.
My kids. My wife.
And BDS agency.
Just my passion.
Well, Brian, thank you for taking the time today to join me out of your busy schedule as well. I want to thank the viewers and listeners for tuning in as well. Join me next Friday with another exciting guest here on The Right Fit. Until then, please stay healthy, stay safe, and have a wonderful weekend.